Meeting here. Today is June 28th, 2023 at 1 o'clock. Welcome everybody to the Princeton Public Utilities Commission's meeting. We'll start with the roll call. Good there? Yep. All right. Next, the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes to that? Gentlemen, see any changes?
I have nothing to add. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Number 3, public comments. Is there any public comment from anyone?
No, sir.
All right, there's none. We'll move on to consent agenda. Questions with anything under the consent agenda that we should consider moving to the regular agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Number 5, updates. Electric department. Mr. Lind, please.
Yeah, since the last meeting, we had a new company come in and test all of our line hose, our rubber blankets, and our trucks. Everything passed, everything went well. Seemed to know what they were doing. So they're supposedly, they were cheaper than the previous company. So I don't see a reason why to switch. I haven't really talked much with the other guys about it. They didn't seem to bring anything to my attention, so I think we'll continue to use them again next year. We had a planned outage at the hospital at the request of the electrician in the hospital last night. They had to do some work inside, so we had to shut that specialty care clinic down for a little bit. Doing some brush clearing, some installing a few services, and finishing up some transformer changeovers what we can for the capital improvements project, waiting for that to start. Hopefully be anytime now. So within the next couple of weeks, they're supposed to be starting on that. The material is arriving. We got another load of transformers in today. I think that's the 3rd load we've got. So we've got all the transformers we need for this first part of this construction season. So these are for the rest of it, the ones that are still coming in, but I think we still good. They get about 25 or 26 transformers on the load, so we still need, I think I added up just over, it was like 81 or 82 transformers yet for the rest of the remaining yet. So we had about 3 loads coming in yet. So we had an incident yesterday at 11th Avenue with Monday with the tree. Homeowner got in a little bit over his head with a rented lift and a chainsaw. And that could go wrong. Well, it did go wrong, but it was close. It was really close. We got there and they were as high as we could get with the lift, so we ended up having to call in a tree company, and they called in a crane and ended up having to cut the tree off. And there wasn't, I don't know if you should see Jake's page. That tree was cut from both sides, and there wasn't much left holding that tree, and they had it tied off to a pickup with an anchor rope, the big anchor rope. Not a ski rope, but yeah, it could have been bad hanging over the 3-phase. So Jake's top-notch tree service and Northland Crane service were able to get it down in 2 pieces. They cut the top off where he had it cut and picked that up and set it in the air, and then they finished cutting it down. So it was a little bit tense, but just better leave stuff up with the professional. Don't know what you're doing, so. Other than that, we've had MMA training and just normal day-to-day stuff, so.
Go back to the transformer, is that a variety, just different sizes, different applications?
Yep.
Or is it a variety enough?
There's some dual voltage transformers that are coming in. And then the straight voltage that we need, the primary voltage that we need for the project. And then, the different KVA, different sizes. Yeah, they're coming in. A little bit of a mix on each load. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
Inspection thing, must be a state agency that's under, or you done annually?
Yep, it's a requirement, that it needs to be done annually, just in case something would happen.
Under what? Or whatever. Okay, state department.
No, I don't think it's necessarily a state requirement.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The truck testing.
Oh,
The whole, it's mandated to do yearly, mandated, I guess. My question.
OSHA. Well, so I guess it's not really a state, it would be more of a
Well, that,
APPA or OSHA.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's not really, it's not a Minnesota state agency, but it's something. It's the dielectric test, the boom strength test. They, ultrasound it for cracks in the valves. They general overall condition of the truck.
Safety check on all the protection equipment for all the electric.
Yeah, do the dielectric test on it, make sure it stands up to the voltage just right. Still,
All right, thank you, Jeremy.
guys.
Water and Power Plant Department, Mr. Schmidt.
Water side, construction season's full swing, so we, the Glen site out there, they got the main run up into the building site there for final steps on testing that, so that water is in. Hydrant is installed there. The twin homes for Nate Cook Construction up on the north end, they got the extra service added into the other one. And that one other existing one brought into their house up there, so that's coming along. Fountain Place, they got the wet taps done on the two main ends, and then they got the additional service coming up from the existing stuff over there. That stuff's all moving along with pre-construction for the industrial park. Earlier in the month, we had water usage just took a big jump. We kind of got nervous, wanted to make sure we'd have something going, so we had leak detection come in. Did find one bad service line. Everything kind of did a pretty well survey of the whole pound. Had one bad service that we got repaired. One of the curb stop there that we got that shut off there on an abandoned house there. So worked through a couple projects there, but we're able to determine that it was just usage and not a leak. Usage jumped so fast there in like 3 days that we went double, but we jumped 200,000 or 300,000 gallons a day that we were pumping in a couple days span. And when it got hot and dry at the beginning of the month, and weren't for sure if we had something going or if it was usage. So we did some investigating on that. Repaired that service line up on 10th Avenue. Did that one in house with the equipment, so everything worked good there. Monthly water testings, the south water tower washing. He got started on that yesterday. Haven't seen him today. I'm guessing he got winded off. So he's got started on that. It's coming out really good. The bottom part of the hole there where it was all black there, he's on the crystal side, I guess now. You look on the bottom there, it's really cleaning up nice. Continuing to work with WSB on the service line replacement stuff for the lead and galvanized service lines. So we're working on the funding for that. Then a mixer go out in the middle tower. We got that pulled out, determine what was wrong there. We got a motor sourced for that. So getting that put back in here hopefully end of the week.
and on that mixer, so what, new mixers, you would say like 8500?
85 or around the 8,000 to 9,000 range.
And Jim, we said stick Jim on it and he got an order for $300. So we decided to
Essentially,
check it out.
Kind of a deep well pump is what they use to drive the mixer. It's like kind of like it looks like a trolling motor, I guess, blade on there, but it's all stainless and stuff, and in a container there or a vessel to move the water in the tower. So it's bad. Then continuing meter installs, they're slow, but we're getting a few here and there, so we're continuing to pick away at them. Power plant, they're just finishing up test runs. Everything looks like it went good. Working on jacket water testing and treatment. A little bit of a bug, I guess you'd say, in the water system there that they were thinking we got that taken care of, a little extra treatment that we had to do there. So got that. Continuing to work on insurance incentive program with League of Minnesota Cities, along with MMUA on that there. So we're working on putting the final pieces of that together, and then they worked on reports. We'll do later.
With our water usage, I'm getting very nervous about getting my bill. But you know, funny, they've been dewatering over there for a week. Maybe that's a Michelle question. I don't know. But you trying to start that pond dry?
No, the sewers was really deep over there, and they had struggle on that, getting that first manhole set. The dewatering wasn't quite either deep enough, and then they not a lot of room there to work with the storm sewer and the water main, and they were kind of stuck in between there. So that the crew struggled on it. They got things finally going there, but this was a bad spot, not a lot of room, and it was awful wet down in there for them.
The water table is high.
Well, that's a bit late, but underground lake. But it just made it so dry, and you look at that.
Yeah.
They're both not related, but yeah. So
That cycle, they're pumping it into the pond, or it ends up in the pond, and they're not that far away, pumping it back out. So trying to get the local spot dried up enough for them to work.
Any other questions for Scott? Scott? House Department update, Mrs. Cunningham.
Yep, so we've had pretty busy few weeks. We are almost ready to convert over to ADP for our payroll. So we're just waiting on final quotes and contracts from them to sign and move forward with that. We also are replacing our postage machine first part of July. United States Postal Service has changed their indicia requirements, and the machine that we currently have is incapable of being updated to accommodate that. So the update doesn't change until those requirements aren't required until 2025, or 2024. But our machine lease is up in July, so it's the right time to switch over. We've also opened budget billing. So instead of being able to enroll once a year, you can now enroll at any time. As long as you have 12 months of history with us and an up-to-date account, you can start budget billing right away. So we did do a post on Facebook for that. We only got 2 responses off it, so we'll just continue to every month keep pushing that you can sign up for budget billing. The other thing that we've done is the Mission Renew project. The recs have now been retired. So Kathy has created a certificate and a letter to be sent to anybody who had purchased recs that have been retired, in acknowledgement of that. And those should go out this week. And then we just have our billing. We had disconnections on Monday. We still have a few folks off, but we've slowly been getting them back on. So.
Thank you. City of Princeton update. Mrs. Pearson.
Yes, well, it's, we have a few things going. We are at the tail end of our classification compensation study. We have the market adjustments for 2023 that are gonna start, at least for the non-union folks, on July 9th. I'm waiting for the 2 bargaining units to hold their member votes on that. We also have a new base pay scale. That's for 23, and then moving forward in 24 and 25, our consultants factored in a 3% COLA increase for each of those years. That will be dependent on where we end up negotiations. Our 2 bargaining unit contracts are expiring this year, so we'll be starting negotiations months. Internal committee, president myself, also here, manual, city's manual is base, and next to related stuff and tech stuff, and so we're almost done with these. We'll be turning it first on the department in July. Their review and discussion in September. Cool. So that's it. I put on my to-do list for 3 years, and it's 3 years. And that especially was new to our finance system, auditing extension, and we've been granted extension to the state auditor's office. City's audit. I'm trying to make things wrong, so at the same time, they want to make sure that they Scott mentioned that to our splash team. Splash tenants, 16 called creative lines, and splash attendance is through the rules of credit given. Two summer interns and organizations and businesses. 3 days. 3 days. Today's sort of much of a challenge. All in all, I think
Thank you.
Let's see, a lot of our admin time, and I guess a lot of Kathy's time and my time the last month. Which George will go through. We are reviewing our IT needs, both for future staff training and refreshers. Did receive notification from SIRVA last month regarding the extension of our quick start contract. 5 years that needs a reallocated date. Society did a big check issues, but for the issues. Did also get our final 2022 SIP report already from SIRVA. We finished the year with an energy savings of 1.864% on sales, which exceeds the state's minimum of 1.5%, and our low income spending requirement of 0.2%. We finished at We've got all our statutory obligations in that program too. Also, on the regulatory side, we did complete our consumer confidence report by distributing a URL to customers. Reported that back to the state, so we met all the requirements for that. And this week I did file our electric utility annual report, which is pretty much the last regulatory report I have to do each year. So I would say that our regulatory season is over. It's good for me. I like that. We did have a couple of external events go on. We did the Glen Metal Raft groundbreaking. Appreciated the commission being there, and then Commissioner Schwartz and Edmund attended last night's MMUA's regional workshop in Whitfield. I thought it went very well. It was nice to see Delano and Buffalo and Glencoe.
It did a lot of updates on what happened with capital and that session and whatnot. And a lot of different changes coming down the line for people that employ people. But it's always great to go to those meetings. You meet new people and then you get to re-meet again and renew, some names, some basics, some friendships, so that build up over time. So I always enjoy it. They do a good job. Jack, do you have
just improve with that. And good to see what the rest of the world doing around us. Get you face.
It seems like if we're going through something and maybe somebody else has already gone through it, it just helps to have that discussion, to talk with, and vice versa.
Yeah, that we one of your position, Carly, be executive director, whatever.
Yes.
You guys read the resource, right? Pretty much. After I started reading their column, I told Keith, I hope I get to meet or something, and I did. Write her columns. Yeah, it was very worthwhile, for sure.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Regular agenda, electric revenue release, series 2023A, Northern Securities.
I think this one is sure.
George Eilertson, Northland Securities. Thank you for the time on your agenda. And what I'd like to cover is the bond sale. So we, as you know, we've been talking for several months about planning for phase one and the financing of that. And so yesterday we priced the bonds, but I'll back up a little bit from there. Keith alluded to a fair amount of his and Kathy's time being involved in preparing for the bonds, and I'll touch on that here. A couple meetings ago that I was with you, we talked about a bond rating and how that could benefit your 2023 bond issue. And previously, the Princeton Public Utilities had been rated A3 with Moody's Investor Service. And so it had been a while since you've gone out and secured that rating. So we went through an indicative rating process, which is where, in essence, we go through a rating call, provide information to Moody's Investor Service, and then they give the rating, but don't make it public. And so what we were hoping for is that you would land in the A category, which you did, at an A3. And so a lot of that review by Moody's Investor Service centered around your utility, your concentration review, meaning your customer base, how much of the usage are your largest customers, your liquidity, in essence, meaning your cash, and kind of your customer base and your growth, kind of what planning tools do you use as well. So certainly we referenced the DGR cash flow in that process as well. So it was a really good process. Hats off to your staff commission because they did a very good job preparing for a rating call and providing background information that was requested. So a couple of the highlights that Moody's said with the assignment of the A3 bond rating was a solid liquidity position where they referenced your days cash on hand. Like we've talked about in the past, your policy talks about maintaining 80 days cash on hand, and it references in the report that you have 228 days of cash on hand year end 2022. So that was viewed as a very strong positive for the utility. Second is you have a moderate debt ratio. So that's even factoring in phase 2. So we talked not only about this upcoming bond, but also the phase 2 bond that will be projected to come in 2025. So factoring those two bond issues in, they still consider you to have moderate debt. And so that's a positive, certainly. So the assignment of that A3 rating was kind of step one. That was an important first step for, trying to, again, get into the bond market with the lowest possible interest rate. So getting the A3 rating, we then went out to the bond insurance providers. And there's two companies that primarily work with Minnesota municipalities and other municipalities around the U.S. AGM, which is Assured Guarantee, and Build America Mutual are both firms that reviewed the Princeton Public Utilities and both approved your bonds for insurance. And so why insurance is important is it lifts your rating from A3 up to AA. So it goes up several notches on the rating ladder. And so what we do is we base who's the firm to work with based upon what premium do they bid. And in this case, Assured Guarantee bid more aggressively than the other firm. And I can reference, we had a kind of a next step in the process, if you will, was marketing your bond issue and having pricing calls. We had Kathy and Keith both participated in a pricing call with our company, with an advisor that represents the utility in this transaction, and certainly your staff, to talk about market conditions, to talk about the enhancements that your bond issue has, meaning the A3 rating plus the bond insurance, and then talk about where should the interest rates be on this particular bond issue. And so that went well. We had kind of a pre-call and then a call after the order period. Yesterday was when we had an order period for your bonds. Sales colleagues of mine that sell to mutual funds, community banks, et cetera, had yesterday to put in their orders. They've had the information about your bond issue through last week into yesterday. And so one positive that came out of that is that we were about 3 times oversubscribed, meaning that we had 3 times the orders for your size of bond. So what that allowed us to do is to lower the interest rates because we had more orders than we needed. And so the end result is that we ended up at a very good spot, I'd say. We ended up at a true interest cost of 4.04%. And so just over 4% for your 20-year bonds. And I looked back, and I know the interest rates have changed, the markets have adjusted a little bit over time. But I look back to March 2nd when we talked about your bond issue, the preliminary structure. And at that time, the interest rates were closer to 4.5%. So we were down almost 0.5%, which the timing is good. One other thing I should note on that bond insurance. So the cost to get the insurance, so there's a premium that they bid, and that insurance cost about $17,000 to get. So you qualify, then you have to pay the premium. But the benefit was, according to our head bond trader, that we benefited by approximately 0.2%, so that it reduced your interest rates that much having the insurance. The interest cost savings of 0.2% on your bond issue is about $150,000. So that cost of insurance certainly paid for itself. So that's a lot of background kind of leading up to the pricing of your bonds. But again, your staff did a great job, not only on the rating call, a lot of information was requested there, but the bond insurance providers. And there was 2 of them, and they asked a lot of questions. And then the next firm asked a lot of questions, but a lot of good information provided. Information like the coal concentration, how much, SIMPA's concentration in coal. So information like that was provided and responded to. So I think the phase 1 financing is turning out very good. It's leading to, I think, a good framework for in 2 years when you come back and do a financing, you'll be able to refer back to this. Moody's will be likely able to reissue that A3 level of bond rating, and the bond insurance providers, again, I would expect to step up. So, but back to this bond issue. So again, 4.04% is the final interest rate. So again, 20-year financing. You've got what's called an optional call date on this bond issue of April 1st of 2031. That's the date that you can prepay or refinance on these bonds. If market conditions allow you to lower the interest rate, you can do that at any point after April 1st of 2031 and any date thereafter. So, and when you reach that call date, you've paid off about 1/3 of your bonds. So you still got a fair amount of your bonds outstanding. About $4.6 million of principal is still outstanding once you reach that call date. So that's of note. Now, board, when you get to the action item here, which is approval of the resolution, I will note on your agenda, it references $6,670,000. The dollar amount has changed to $6,510,000. So we're issuing fewer bonds, and I just wanted to note that part of that change to what's called bond premium. So there was premium came into the transaction, approximately $168,000, comes in as a source of revenue. It's a way that bonds are marketed and bonds are sold to investors in the current market. So you still net the same dollar amount that you were planning on, $6 million, and it's just the dollar amount that you're borrowing has moved down a little bit. So that is, and one certainly important note is, when do you get the money? July 20th. That's the closing date on the bonds. So part of the bond issue includes a debt service reserve fund. That's one of the covenants, if you will, in the bond issue. That's security for the bondholders, is that you maintain a 1-year reserve fund for this bond issue. And so that money will be available to your staff at closing, and then it can be invested up to the yield on the bonds. So we'll continue to advise on that. Board, that's a quick overview of the financing. Any questions I can address for you?
The positive. A little under something first.
Yeah, I'm certainly pleased when the final numbers came in right around that 4% mark. And I think, again, your staff, a lot of time and effort went into getting the groundwork for their bond rating as well as the insurance. And again, the interest rates cooperated as well.
George, you've done a great job. I appreciate it, and the openness and the clarity and simplicity of understanding this. Really appreciate it. I thank you.
Yeah.
We need action.
We need 2 motions. First motion would be a resolution to approve the bond sale.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
And then the second motion would be to approve a dissemination agent agreement. What that does is it engages Northland to prepare the annual continuing disclosure reporting for Princeton Public Utilities. It's a requirement for entities that issue publicly offered debt.
I'll make that point again. What he said.
I'll second.
We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
Terrific.
Only last thing I'll add is, we had talked at one point about needing to do a special meeting on July 12th. We have now taken care of that. So we won't have to do a July 12th meeting. What will happen is George and I will be at the city council meeting on July 13th because city council will have to pass a current resolution in order to proceed with the bond sale.
That was that work study meeting that we're talking about.
Yeah, so we no longer do that.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning that, Keith. And board, what that, we've talked about this before, where you have the authority to issue the debt, the city council needs to concur with your action. In the past, we've done it a little bit more where maybe the PUC meets one day and the city meets the next day. The city just needs to concur before the bonds close. So before July 20th. So that syncs up well with the July 13th meeting. So no need for a special meeting.
So I have a question. Do we need to adjust that dollar amount from the 6,670,000 to the 5,610?
Well, we did a resolution to approve the bond sale. Kathy's got the corrected resolution that provided us yesterday. So that's the document that we're getting.
So that's reprinted and
Correct.
okay, that's
We will want to make sure you stay after just to sign that.
Yep.
The chair can sign.
that makes sense. That was just a good question.
Perfect. That's all the action
That's
needed.
good.
Thank you.
For 2022, Mr. Miller from Smith and Schaefer. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you, board, for the opportunity to work with the commission once again. Very pleased to report that we had a clean audit. Once again, Keith, Kathy, and the rest of the staff were very helpful, very forthcoming. We didn't have any concerns. We didn't list any major issues in the audit. It went very smoothly once again. What I'd like to cover today is just a PowerPoint presentation of the highlights of the financial statements. I know you have the financial statements in your board packet or your agenda. If you have specific questions on the financial statements, please feel free to stop me, or I'll open it up for questions at the end. But rather than go through that full document, we just prefer to go through a kind of a high level summary in the form of this PowerPoint. So the first slide in the PowerPoint is just in regards to the electric fund operations. So this the operating revenues, operating expenses, the non-operating income or loss, and then the overall net increase in positions for the fund. You can see that the operating revenues were relatively flat, up a little bit in 2022 to just over $7.7 million. And your net position increased by over $500,000 in 2022. Down a little bit from the prior year, your operating expenses were up like a lot of people's operating expenses were in 2022. The next slide then is in regards to the cash position. So the bars represent your total cash broken down by the types of cash that you held at the end of the year. And you can see that the cash took a pretty substantial growth during 2022. And that's really from a positive increase in operation generated cash, more than enough to cover your capital expenditures and your debt service. And then you also had some other items that affected cash, sales of some investments, things like that. for an overall increase in cash of $606,000 for the year. The next slide is just in regard to the debt on the electric fund side. And you can see that 2 of the issuances were paid off in 2022. One of them was regularly scheduled payoff. The other was paid off early. So you have the one remaining bond, at least for the time being, in the electric fund. And that totaled $680,000 at the end of the year. And I believe that one's scheduled to be paid off, regularly scheduled in 2025. The next slide then is just in regards to the purchase power and your usage for the year. You can see you purchased just under 57 million kilowatt hours during 2022, and your delivered energy was a little over 53 million kilowatt hours in 2022, and that resulted in a line loss percentage of about 6.8%. You can see the comparison to the prior 2 years there as well. Then we move on to the water fund, and you can see operating revenues were down a little bit from the prior year, representing a little bit less usage. Operating expenses, again, up in the water fund, just like they were in the electric fund, more so than revenue. And your overall increase for the year 2022 was just under $300,000 for the water fund. And then the cash slide for the water fund, similar to the electric fund cash slide, we show the different types of cash in the bar graph. The overall cash increase for the water fund was $89,000 for the year, mostly from operations, almost covering your capital expenditures and your debt service, and the other miscellaneous areas resulting in the increase in your cash in the water fund. The next slide then is the debt for the water fund. And again, two similar bonds were paid off, one as scheduled and one early. The total debt outstanding at the end of the year was $1.2 million. And the smaller bond is scheduled to be paid off this year. It may have already happened at this point. And the other bond, I believe, gets paid off in 2027 or by 2027. And then we have one final slide just in regards to your net pension liability. So this is the utilities portion of the para underfunding overall. So the para obviously covers a lot of municipalities and governmental agencies throughout the state. And the underfunding of that is put on the balance sheets of all the different utilities and cities and townships and whatever the para represents. So this is the utilities portion, and you can see it took a pretty healthy jump from 2021, and that's really primarily related to the investment performance in 2021. We all know investments took a hit, so then obviously your portion of liability goes up in that regard. So that's everything on the PowerPoints. In the financial statements, we did issue an unmodified audit opinion, which is our highest level of attestation we can provide, meaning that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. So that was a clean opinion in our eyes. There was one thing to point out there. Keith brought it up, and I think actually Michelle may have brought it to Keith's attention that for as long as we could tell, I mean, we took over the audit last year, and prior to that, even the utility was presented as a department of the city of Princeton in the audit report, and that's not true. You're a legally separate entity, but you are a component unit of the city, so you're still included in the city's financial statements, but you're not a actual department. So we did make that change in the audit opinion, and one place in the notes just noting that the utility is a component unit of the city rather than a department. So just wanted to point that out. Next, there were 2 letters that were included in your agenda packet as well. These are required communications. Every time we do an audit, we're required to make these communications to those charged with governance. So you as the board are the governance of the organization. So these are the required communications. The first, the 5-page letter, pretty standard. We make certain communications, make sure you're aware of things. Probably the the biggest thing to note on page 2 is the fact that we implemented the new lease standard, the government accounting lease standard for the commission's financial statements. If you're at this meeting last year, you heard me talk about that lease standard. Now it's in place. So basically what happened is you have some lease receivables for the cell tower rentals, things of that nature. So you're getting money over time as part of those long-term leases. GASB is now requiring you to put the present value of those payments on your balance sheet and then offset it with a deferred inflow of resources kind of on the liability side. So that's the main thing. Really what it does is it kind of puffs up your asset side and it puffs up your deferred inflows on the liability side, and it doesn't have a whole lot of effect on your change in net position during the year. It's just very little in regards to that, but it is now required to be on your balance sheet. So that's really what that was all about. Took some work, but it's now in your financials, so it should be fairly straightforward going forward. You just have to add any new leases and things of that nature. Also in this letter, we talk about significant estimates or sensitive estimates that affected your financial statements. The two most sensitive that we identified were the depreciation of your capital assets. As you know, that's an estimate. You estimate how long those are going to last, so you depreciate them over their estimated useful lives. We just point out that that's an estimate in the financial statements. And also that net pension liability, the last slide in the PowerPoint that we talked about, that's an actuarial estimate. So that's a rather significant estimate as well. And we point that out in this letter also. The only other thing I'll point out, again, the very standard letter, in the uncorrected and corrected misstatement section on page 3, we talked about the fact that we passed on some adjustments. So we did record the material leases that you have on your books for those cell tower leases. There was one smaller one that we passed on just because it didn't make sense. It's a smaller lease and with lower materiality. So that's in the last page of this letter, just the effect that would have had on the financial statements if we would have recorded it. So that's everything in that letter. And then the other is the shorter letter, the 2-page letter. So it's commonly referred to as a management letter, where we list out significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control. The only thing we noted is the same thing that we've noted last year and your prior auditor noted probably for as long as they were auditing you. It's just the fact that you can't segregate all of your duties from an internal control standpoint. You don't have enough staff. We wouldn't expect you to be able to segregate all those duties. It would probably be very fiscally irresponsible to hire enough staff to do so. But we're again required to report that to you as a deficiency in internal control. And then you as a commission have agreed to do certain other things. You have reviews, you have after the fact people looking at it, the fact that you as the board review financial information, those are all mitigating controls to reduce your risk. But again, we just have to report that due to our professional standards. So.
I've been in public service at various levels for over 20 years now, and I've never been an audit. Didn't say that.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, the city of Minneapolis probably doesn't have this problem. They have a lot of staff to be able to do that, but well, pretty much all of our clients get this comment in our audits. So again, it was a very clean audit, and I want to thank Keith and the staff for all their help in making it go smoothly. And I'd be willing to answer any questions anyone has at this time.
Anybody have any? Dan, you're percolating.
Yeah. I just decided I want to go. So what staff, if we were larger than say the city of, what types of tasks would you assign to different staff?
It's going to depend on the area, but I think we list out some here in regards to controls over cash receipts here. So you might have one person who receives the cash, another person who logs the cash, a third person goes then and makes the deposits of the cash, another person is actually recording the cash deposits in your software, according to customers, another person reviewing that work.
Is that mostly where it would fall then? Under the
That's where you have probably most of the duties. There's several duties to segregate, some other areas, for, I don't know, maybe for your payroll, for example, you still have someone reviewing the payroll, someone approving it, someone, actually, is getting the information from your timekeeping system, things like that, where there wouldn't be as many, but each area is going to have its duties to segregate.
So with that, in your opinion, again, require a larger staff, does that address that issue?
Yeah, and again, we aren't recommending that you go out and hire people so that you can segregate all your duties. It just probably wouldn't be very fiscally responsible with the ratepayers' money at that point, because you'd have to probably increase rates to cover the additional staff. But you can do things to mitigate your risks, like you have, where you have approvals, you have secondary reviews, you have, maybe an outside party looking at the information like you on the board are doing, things of that nature.
That's it. So,
Okay. I don't have a question directly for you, Mr. Miller, but I just, to Keith and the staff, looking at the line loss percentage.
Yeah.
You see an increase, although small, but what is the steps to prevent that, or at least stop that from increasing?
Well, you are going to see variability like that.
Yeah.
That number.
My concern is the variable is up. So what needs to change for that to actually stabilize? Which it won't, I understand what you're saying, but to not escalate that into overtime to 10% or whatever.
Well, first off, let me state that SIMBA in their resource planning assumes all of its members sit in 2%. So we are better than SIMBA.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
I will also say that even though it is commonly referred to as a line loss, which is what I always call it, it is not a line loss in the strict sense of that is the physics of how many kilowatt hours you lost. What it is a difference between the kilowatt hours sold to us by SIMBA, that divided into the number of kilowatt hours that we sell. So line losses account for the physical line losses, but it can also reflect underbilling, errors in the meter on both sides, both at the city gate as well as at the customer. I mean, so just so we understand.
Yeah,
what's all of that.
and I appreciate that.
Power factors is a big component to it, which is really dependent on how our customers use the product. The cap plant, which is a voltage conversion completion, will drop that number. Part of the reason we use 1270 is it's a more efficient system.
Read my mind, that's my question.
We can account for some of it through efficiency standards and transformers and other distribution equipment. So, that's something that when we did the major materials bid, we looked at was the efficiency ratings. But yeah, we were part of that. So there's a lot of day-to-day things that we do. And then, like I said, there's a lot of what you might call unbilled stuff that can factor into it. A lot of that is making sure our billing system is working correctly. I think going from an AMR-based metering system to an AMI-based metering system will give us more accuracy.
Sure.
And help reduce the
Well,
bill.
and that could be one of the biggest reasons it went up.
We might just know
Sure.
we're
Okay.
measuring it better than.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, too, from our perspective, from our perspective, we wouldn't get too concerned unless it was over 10%, say, then we would want to maybe have Keith and the staff look into it more. But certainly.
Now we got
Well, it could change. The number could change.
I didn't mean to hold you, Mr. Miller. That was a good explanation. I look at those things and appreciate the answers. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you all.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think it'd be nice to fund this up by having a motion to accept.
Oh, sure, absolutely, I'm sorry. I will make that motion to accept this year's 2022, or last year's 2022 audit from Smith and Schaefer, owner Smith and Schaefer.
I got it.
We have first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brook bid. Mr. Schmidt, you're up again.
We, this would be for the power plant, over unit 6 and 7, and the boiler is the two ones that have been identified as needing replacement. We received actually a late, or not late, but, found another option for bidding. He just received a bid in here today, I guess, for it. Come in with a good number, Clearview Construction. Wastewater, been using them, another local good recommendation on with this company. So, we're looking through everything. The Clearview construction bid is, I think, where we're gonna, looks like the one to would recommend going with.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair, so this is a budgeted item that was approved for 2023. Scott and his team did a lot of great work. Got the 3 bids in, which was what was in your packets, but of course your packets were distributed on Friday. We didn't do a formal bid process where we had a deadline date. We just went out and listed bids. We did end up getting a bid from Clearview. Like Scott said, they got it this morning. And it was very favorable, so we wanted to bring it to the commission's attention. The memo that's in your packet was written obviously prior to this bid being submitted. And so Scott actually made a couple of phone calls this morning, and I believe, Scott, your recommendation is to go with Clearview as the low bid, but also because we do know that they also did the work at the wastewater treatment plant, and Chris has been very happy with them. Yeah, I think they're also bidding on library. Yes. They started. So it's obviously a firm that is doing business in town. We talked to some other folks about the quality of their work. They've been very happy. And as you can see, basically what ended up happening with the bids is we had 2 bids in the $80,000 range and then 2 bids in the $50,000 range. So, Scott really spent a lot of time going through it to compare materials and make sure everything checked out, and it does. We feel very confident that this is the right way to go. So Scott's recommendation is to select Clearview as our contract.
It seems like we talked about the roofing situation on or off throughout the last few years. What is the budgeted amount?
It was 77.
That sounds good, right?
Part of the simple stuff.
So I think the total project cost was $77,000. Of that, Simple was going to pay 49.5. We were going to pay the remainder, whatever that would be. Yeah, whatever the difference is. Obviously, since the bid's coming in lower, SIPA, both of our shares go down. So we're actually saving money for both entities. Basically, what ends up happening is the roof over units 6 and 7, we pay half, SIPA pays half because unit 7 is ours. And 6 is under the full like diesel, so SIPA is responsible for that. The boiler is covered. So it works out to about 2/3, 75%. They're different roof sizes, so the numbers are a little more, but generally speaking, that's how it works out. We did also, just in case anybody recalls, we did put in money for the office roof replacement as well for this year. However, when we did our roof inspections this spring, it's holding up. Whether or not to spend the money early if we don't have to. So this would be the opening. These two. The new power plant initiative.
We have to look at the difference this year. And now, in my mind, I would think, are we sure we're getting apples and apples?
Right.
I trust that you are. Don't get me wrong.
Scott and his staff went over it multiple times.
I
We're not gonna use it.
With the large discrepancy, we were really scratching our head of materials. I mean, there are different materials. The two bottom lower bids there, they come in with the same material. The other ones had some different materials in them. Doing some research, and I'm not real familiar with the flat roof stuff, but doing some research on it. The PVC is actually kind of what everybody's starting to go to, and the more highly recommended would depend on where you look and what you read. But a good material, local, the Duralast. I mean, they're expanding, they're adding factories. And kind of locals looking through their information and stuff, so they're a growing company and going to have a good warranty. And
you mentioned they're all certified by the manufacturer or licensed, or what I get the terminology, but they are using
certified installers, I guess would be correct.
Was the warranty the same for everyone?
I believe so.
The reason I ask is I'm familiar with the 10-year warranty on roofs. This is 15, so I don't know if the industry has changed or did they just give a longer one?
I believe they're all 15.
Okay. So Keith, I would have a question for you. With this coming in so late, is there a risk? You know, you mentioned there wasn't a time frame or anything. Clarify that for me as far as these bids, they haven't been notified at some point in time that we're looking for this.
Yeah, so I will make a distinction between a public bidding process
Please.
and getting quotes. So this is like just Scott basically did just went out and get a couple of quotes. Okay. So there's not a pre-bid packet like we did phase one. There's not a bid and sealed bid opening. This is all under state statute requirements for that. So if you're under, let's say it's under $25,000, you just get multiple quotes.
That does.
Yeah, okay.
I just didn't want somebody coming back and saying, okay, wait, you know, so you clarify.
And the last one that we did get back, we got in touch with him quite a bit later after we had got the other ones in. Just in conversation with Chris there, he was going to he was only a week he had it turned around. So I mean, a little over that. Yep. So I mean, from when he was out, they would get out and inspect it. And everybody was here. Jim took them all up on the roofs. Everybody's seen what they had to contend with up there. We just just found out about it later in the process from everybody else. And so it was a little behind schedule on getting his numbers.
Yeah, my concern too, I don't want to be yourself vulnerable to some kind of a breach of something.
Yeah.
Be my concern.
If everyone's satisfied with the recommendation from Mr. Schmidt, I would look for a motion to accept Clearview Construction.
I'll make a motion to accept the Clearview Construction roofing estimate.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed.
See, Chair. Sorry.
Thanks for your work.
We're interrupting. Back at the office, they're asking if I could get, this is the purchase agreement for the bond sale. It lists, Northern Securities purchasing the bonds, interest rates, etc. So I have the general manager chair. Is that something that I could
get you to sign over?
get you to sign? And then I need to send it back. That we can clear trades on.
Yeah.
Until we have.
Your work is going to hold you hostage.
Oh, they get excited.
Understood.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Item D, PUC bylaws, policies discussion. Mr. Whittier.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this was only a bit of last month. I didn't include it in the package.
I had.
Oh, cool. Did print out copies just in case you're going through your packet. Again, this is something that we've been kind of kicking around for a while, a way to just formalize a lot of our policies and procedures, get them in a consistent format in a centralized document. Give a little bit of background on it. I did use a lot of references from Elk River. They had gone through a strategic planning process of sorts quite a few years ago. Really kind of put into words kind of a best governance practices for municipal utilities to make sure that roles and responsibilities are delineated to document different policies. So I did incorporate policies into the draft that has already been approved by the commission, including purchase policy, cash reserves, things of that nature. Without and part of my reason for even thinking about this was as I went through our documents, I really couldn't find any bylaws for the organization that kind of helps the commission understand what's the governance of. So generally speaking, we're just kind of not what's under statute, which is sometimes limited in terms of giving direction. So this is an attempt to put something together to help better define the roles and responsibilities, to set expectations, to start to, like I said, kind of put down on paper who we are and what we want to be. As already been called and look forward to complicated policies and everything like that. And having some bylaws in place is always a good thing. And especially as we have, especially when you're part of a government entity in which you potentially have new people come in on an annual or at least very regular basis who may or may not have experience with government. It helps kind of explain how it works. So just offered this as a draft, as a way to maybe start codifying who it is you guys want to be. So with that, I mean, it's meant for the commission. It's meant to help you guys answer questions when they come up about policies and procedures and best practices. So I guess that
Guys read through this? And then jump on it.
Oh, I think it was kind of clean, things up. Very much. I didn't have any problem with it. It's just basically puts it right. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I pretty much share that. Basically, some of the stuff we have in our policy. I guess maybe the best way to sum it up in my mind is this codifies structure what we maybe had all over the place and put them together is the way I can look at it. I didn't see anything online there and it shouldn't be there.
to me, it also provides a document that can grow.
Yeah, that's what the way I look at it. If I don't like something that's in it, at a future point, I can make a motion to change it.
But the next thing it gives staff then is clear direction as to this is what the commission wants.
I mean, I don't see this as like this is permanent wherever I see it might change, but it's a start of a process procedure, which
Michelle mentioned earlier, the city's going through an updated public for personnel policy, which is like 20 years old, said. So I mean, it's nothing lasts forever.
Well, the fact that
Times
it's,
change and
it's a living document, so it can be changed at will. Anytime that we see
through
the,
the process.
right. So,
It's not something that's gonna change our audit or,
no,
so it's,
And that's prefer with me, but I can't say, I can't give an example of any help that I had, but I'm sure I probably could have, or if something's gonna come up, I'm gonna say, what are we supposed to do there? What is our policy?
I was looking back and forth here, I came across, under new commission,
what page is that?
I haven't found it yet. But to me, it was like a manual to be able to, depending upon the background that a person has that's appointed to this position, can vary extremely, from A to Z on that person's background. Sure. So for that person to automatically step in here and take control, it's almost impossible because you have to learn this whole industry. And not only the whole industry, but the process in which this entity works. So I thought that I saw something on here of a new handbook or something for someone. And if there isn't, and if I saw it someplace else, I don't know if there can be a sample structure for a new commissioner to come in that may not have the background that many of us have.
Well, I do have the orientation.
Okay, that's maybe what I missed.
That's different than this.
Yeah, but so
And-
that's what I was trying to reference, but it's not in here. That's why I can't find it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the orientation is meant to, basically condense this down a little bit, kind of explain the,
Sure.
what the general calendar is.
I saw mine over 3 years ago. That's why I'm not remembering.
Yeah.
But okay, so if that's covered, I don't have a problem with this. I'm just used to vetting material first before accepting it. But if we've all vetted it in our own time, then that's fine. I have no issues with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, otherwise, we take action. We need action, that's what we're looking for.
Well, we should have something.
yeah,
Right.
I'll make a motion to accept this draft as the commission policy manual.
Second,
All right, we have a first and a second. Is this a current date anywhere pertaining to this?
The day was just the last
Of this
revision I had made, but if the commission approves it today, I will update it with the base.
Okay. All right, so with that addition, is that all right, gentlemen? So we have a first and a second with that correction. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passed. We have a working policy document. E, discussion on evaluating options for potentially improving electric service and increasing community involvement in Princeton's industrial park. This was discussed a little bit, not specifically Princeton, but territories. Some are landlocked, some aren't, that were in the group yesterday. So they couldn't change anything if they wanted to. They're under different umbrellas of operation. So it's interesting on the different methodologies that are out there and how they operate and how they're limited and how some aren't. And they were asking questions on, how does ours work with the new industrial park? So it wasn't our area and how it is. So some people weren't familiar with that. So I don't know if there's a specific point that you wanted to discuss or talk locally about our situation of growth.
I was just thinking, given the joint meeting,
Yeah,
that you folks had with the city council.
Yeah.
Which was one of the topics we talked about.
Yeah.
I wanted to give the kind of the commission an opportunity to, I don't know that there's a motion, but, the three of you kind of discussing that as the, so staff those kind of direction.
Yeah, see, we got the support from during that joint meeting, I think, to start diving into seeing if it really makes sense as far as that, so. Start developing a plan of action.
Yeah, I think, intention. Yeah, staff can start. Put some numbers together and see what it needs.
my recollection of the meeting was that, you know, even though there wasn't an official tally by the council, but the general feeling was, you know, do what you have to do to move forward, to grow with the city, et cetera.
If it's even feasible. Well, basically.
Right. And then, council person or member, Jeff said, you know, he'd like to see the numbers, which makes it a feasibility study. So I would be all, you know, for that statement I made yesterday, and you know, was that if we're not growing, we're standing still. You know, we're being passed up by somebody. You know, if it's your business or my business or whoever, whatever entity you are, if you aren't growing, if you're the city of Princeton, if you're not growing, somebody else is getting it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would like to hear some outside.
That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna do it, let's do it right.
Yeah.
And I think we hire someone to.
Yeah, we had an outside consultant do a 10-year rate study for us, to look at cash flows, to look at doing something similar when you're talking a significant event.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I mean, I can't imagine that the staff to really dive into it the way it needs to be, so.
Yeah.
What I was pointing at is that I have a retention of DGR as a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been great for us.
Yeah, they make.
Yes, it looks like we're.
Well, they know us, they know the area, they know what we're going through, and I'm going to begin to ask staff to try to tackle and review separately. You know, it's something that.
Well, I think they could manage it, but, you know.
Well, the same thing that he's been doing with BPR, communicating and the updates and give us direction on if it's something we should tackle.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I need a motion.
Not at this time. I don't.
Need a motion to.
We may, if we get an idea of the cost.
Yeah.
Correct.
You get a contract, whatever.
Yeah, I guess maybe get an estimate from them to see what it costs to look into that.
Okay.
And do a presentation to another maybe joint meetings at that point.
Yeah.
Another thing too, you know, we're gonna be dealing with connected, by us having a neutral third party, it takes away the. I don't know what word I would use there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like
Yeah.
any battery or.
Yeah.
And with connectors and with the businesses out there, the third party company. Okay, the word like it.
Yeah, but and it doesn't make sense. They determine it doesn't make sense. Or either.
We want to avoid what happens in the things, you know. We went totally transparently.
Michelle, with what you just heard, do you concur that that's what you heard on in person?
Yes.
Takes any personal agendas out of it.
Yeah.
Making
Somebody's out there to come back and say, well, you hired him, so they did what you wanted. Well, so, you hope we.
Yeah. Can't imagine that they would give them.
No, I'm not saying that, but like somebody will come back and say that, well, you hired him, so they did what you wanted.
I think you're on the right track.
Thank you.
And that was really awesome.
Yep. You got it.
You can, if people have questions about where the numbers came from, it'd be nice to have a third party to answer those questions,
If there's no other business to discuss, then I would suggest that we, all right, any other discussion? I make a motion that we adjourn with, 2:19, you coming in, oh, secretary. And first and second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, everybody.
Ladies, everyone. Oh,